Everything Everywhere All at Once won Best Picture in 2023. Most people agree that it's a good movie, and yet I feel like it's very flawed. On my first watch, I felt there were moments that were overwhelming, and more importantly, for a movie with such a fun and unique concept, I felt like they missed some opportunities to really take it to its fullest potential. But somehow, after saying all that, I think this is one of the greatest movies ever made. I can recognize some of its flaws, but this movie affected me as a person. And it's a really weird feeling to have, knowing that there's things that maybe could have been better about this movie, but it emotionally resonated with me so much that I don't know how I could call it anything other than a perfect movie. I will try not to spoil anything about it, because I think it, like most movies, is so much better when you know nothing going in. But I will say that the latter half of that movie, it sent me this message that I would best boil down to the idea of fighting with kindness. And maybe that sounds corny when I say it, but if I had 2 hours of character development before that, it would sound pretty nice. But all I'm really here to say is that as much as I think this movie has some mistakes, some flaws with it, it genuinely emotionally impacted me. And I feel like it's changed who I am as a person more than any movie has done before. I have found myself, ever since watching that movie for the first time, actually making more of an effort to just compliment people sometimes. And it all comes back to that idea I took from this movie of fighting with kindness. It sounds even more corny the more that I say it, but this movie does such a good job of portraying it in a way where it feels badass. To look at a world that sucks and is beating you down and everyone around you, and just continuing to be kind, to go out of your way, to have fun and do the nicest thing possible. That can be pretty badass sometimes. I could never do the movie justice in a couple-minute summary without sounding like a 4th grade teacher, like, being kind is cool, guys. All I can say is that it's a phrase that's stuck in my head. Fight with kindness, and it's made me compliment people more. It's made me feel genuinely a little bit happier about who I am and what I'm doing in the world. And as much as I feel like this movie could have done some things better, it genuinely made such an impact on me. In some way, on some small scale, it has changed my outlook on life a little bit. And if that's not everything you can hope to possibly accomplish with a movie, then I don't know what is. To make people feel things, and to change the way they live their life, even just a tiny little bit, that's the most powerful thing you can accomplish with art. As much as there might be drawbacks from an objective film critic point of view, I want to give this movie a 10 out of 10, whether it deserves it or not. And that's kind of why, if I'm being honest with you, I don't use Letterboxd or things like that. I mean, I totally get the appeal of it. I think it's fun. I think it's cool to be able to have that sort of catalog of all the movies that you've watched and compare it, contrast it with all of your friends, give things a ranking. I see how it's all fun, but to me personally, it just kind of stresses me out and distracts from my ability to let the art just affect me. I just want to be able to watch a movie and say that it's good, or it's bad, or it's life-changing, without having to decide whether it's more or less life-changing than Doogal. I just want to allow these movies to affect me in whatever way they can. I don't want to be sitting there watching the movie, thinking about what I'm going to say, and sometimes I don't want to have an intelligent opinion at all. I just want to watch this movie like a dumbass and be proud of it. But it's not just Everything Everywhere All at Once that has me feeling some of these feelings. In fact, it's not even just movies at all. Because over the course of this year, I spent a lot of time playing the game. And this was a game that I was very hesitant to get into because I knew it was long as fuck. And I don't like long games. I like a game I can sit down and beat in 5 hours, and this one took me 80 hours over the course of 7 months. And what's crazy about that is that half the time I didn't even like it. I felt like I was grinding and grinding away at this game. Sometimes I'd turn on my Xbox to play it again, and I'd be like, fuck, I gotta go to Tartarus again. Clearly it's a game that still hooked me. I think it had some fun strategy gameplay, and more than anything, the story and the characters. It kept me invested, but like goddamn did Tartarus have to be that long. There were many times where I felt like this was a flawed game that just wasn't for me, and I considered giving up on it, but something kept bringing me back, and I'm so glad that it did. This was a story that maybe wasn't quite as life-changing as Everything Everywhere All at Once was for me. It didn't necessarily change how I act in my day-to-day life. I feel like instead it just reaffirmed some of my deepest personal beliefs. And that was a powerful thing to experience. And really, it's that very last cutscene that does everything for me. I was feeling maybe slightly underwhelmed with the ending before that, but that last cutscene tied things together so beautifully for me. And I feel like it so strongly sent this message of how the most important thing in life is just caring about other people. I mean, that is a theme that is carried throughout the entirety of Persona 3 Reload. One of the main mechanics of the game is that improving your social bonds with other people can actually improve your ability in combat. And I think that's a great way of tying together two completely different genres of video game and two different important things about life: connecting with other people and fighting shadow monsters. But for real, I think that's one of the most interesting things about the Persona series. It's a great way of tying together two completely separate worlds, from the social simulator aspect of the game and the turn-based strategy aspect. It marries those things together in a really cohesive way, and in a way that honestly manages to send a good message about how connecting with people is one of the most important things you can do in life. That's one of those kind of rare examples of how this story being in a video game genuinely enhances its value as a story, as you are personally connecting or choosing to connect with different characters, and that improves your ability in combat and changes the course of the game. But coming back to that ending, it's another thing that really emotionally resonated with me. And maybe a part of that is because of how long I spent with this game and how long it took me to get to that end. It was a part of my life for about 7 months, and for something that was such a big part of my year in a weird way, it felt so incredibly good to feel it echo some of the things that I believe in life. I will again try not to spoil exactly what happens with the story. All I'm talking about is my personal feelings on it, and how amazing it felt to have this game mirror so closely some of the things that I believe about what it means to be a human and be alive. It's powerful just as a conclusion to the story, but also in this more meta way where I can look at this game and look at the hundreds of people that worked on it and know that this was a message that all of those people believed in too. It's a message about how all that really matters in life, all that has to matter, is caring about people and having people that care about you too. Who knows if there's some greater purpose to it all, if there's some actual reason for us to be here. I don't know, and we'll never know. But when you care about someone, that's all the reason you need to keep living. And for all the writers of this game to come together and agree that that's a message they want to send, a message that feels almost identical to some of my core beliefs about life and being a human being, is really cool and comforting to know that there's other people that think that way too. To see these important beliefs to me represented so clearly in a game, to know that the writers so clearly wanted to send that same message, and that that message has undoubtedly resonated with millions of people at this point, that's a really cool and comfortable thing that makes me a little more confident in who I am. It might not have made the change that Everything Everywhere All at Once made in my life, but it makes me want to double down and live my way of life even harder. I felt kind of moved by both this movie and this video game. And overall, I just think it's so cool and so powerful the way that media and entertainment is able to actually impact our ways of life in a little way. As dumb as it might be sometimes, entertainment can make a meaningful impact on people. This movie and this stupid video game, things that I didn't even like at times, they made a serious impact on me. They made me think deeper about life and what it all means. And that's incredibly powerful. That is something that very few things in life can accomplish. And when it comes to rating and reviewing pieces of media, there is that intangible element that people so often just brush to the side or push away in the name of being more objective. They throw aside all the subjective elements of what made something meaningful to them in the name of creating some more objective, critical review. But the truth is, there is no objective review of any piece of art. And personally, I think it's so much more interesting and meaningful to hear why something impacted someone in a certain way. I don't care if those circumstances will never be recreated with anyone else. I want to know how this piece of media affected you and why it did. Tell me the random circumstances in your life that made this a meaningful thing to you. Tell me what made you as a person connect with it. I think that's so much cooler to hear why this thing resonated with you as a person, why it was the perfect time in your life for you to experience this story. That's a more meaningful review to me. That allows you to connect with that person, that reviewer, a little bit deeper, and maybe see how and why a piece of media, even if you don't like it, can make that meaningful impact on somebody else. All of this stuff is created to just try and make an impact on somebody out there. And if it actually accomplished that for somebody, even if it's the worst piece of media in the world, I want to hear how and why it made that impact. Tell me why it connected with you so that I can connect with you a little bit deeper and maybe have a better shot at viewing it from your perspective next time. Those are the kind of reviews that I want to see more of in the world. Give me every subjective element possible and let me see it the way that you do. Because as for me, I think Everything Everywhere All at Once and Persona 3 Reload are flawed pieces of media, and I'm done pretending I have to dock them points for that. Each and everything we interact with has the potential to deeply impact us as a person, just depending on who we are and where we happen to be in that moment. And you know what? I kinda liked Doogal.